A girl was floating in the air above the entrance to a large gray temple. Her hair was lavender in color, and on her head was an ornament resembling a tiara with a stud decorated with stones. On her forehead was a diamond-shaped crystal of a sky blue color. She was dressed in a white dress with a rather deep neckline and a blue cape. In the girl's hands was a scroll. Looking at the crowd of young girls and boys gathered near the temple, she said that a 19-year-old student who had not reached the 6th level of Kai study would be expelled from school. The students whose names will be read out will be able to go about their business in peace. The girl began to read out numerous names aloud, while the long-haired, brown-haired Gu Shaoyang stood in the crowd and was very worried. He had been practicing Kai for more than 6 years, but was only able to reach the 5th level. He lacked quite a bit to stay in the sect of immortals. When the guy realized that his name was not pronounced, he swore obscenely and fell to the ground, losing consciousness. The guy abruptly jumped up on the bed with a scream, deciding that he had a terrible dream. The girl who was reading the names came up to Gu. The guy was very surprised by Zia's presence. Aloud, he noted that there were many bubbles of different colors flying around the girl, and asked her about their origin. However, the girl replied that she did not understand what he was talking about and said that Shaoyang had not reached the 6th Kai level within the prescribed number of years and therefore would be expelled from school. Zia noted that the 5th level of Kai will be enough to ensure the safety of yourself and your loved ones for the rest of your life. Gu seemed to ignore what the girl said and again informed her that strange multicolored bubbles were flying around her. Zia was enraged by Gu's reaction and told him that he had been unconscious for half an hour. Leaving the room, she began to talk about the fact that there are many people who cannot enter the immortal door, but the young man stopped her. The girl turned back towards the guy, expecting to see him on the bed, but he suddenly appeared a centimeter from her face. Shaoyang was standing very close to Zia and again talking about some strange bubbles. He reached out with his hand to touch one of them. Zia was very indignant and confused at the same time, so much so that she could not move and only cursed, while the young man continued to reach for the bubble. At that moment, when the young man touched the blue ball, it hurt him and he felt as if some kind of force possessed him. Zia was extremely outraged by Gu's behavior and hit him in the face with all her might so that he flew into the wall. At that moment, another young man entered the room, happy at the news that Shaoyang had woken up, but his smile was quickly replaced by surprise at what he saw. Zia approached the guy and with anger in her voice ordered to make sure that Gu left the room. Shaoyang was kneeling on the floor at the same time and expressed concern that he thought his ribs were broken. The guy squatted down and with a laugh began to tell Gu that he saw him trying to touch Zia. According to the guy, Shaoyang is going to leave school, but still dares to touch the hands of the first beauty of the sect, the most beautiful Zia Kinkyu. Gu didn't pay attention to the words of the guy standing in front of him and imitating Zia's expression, as all his thoughts were focused on the bubbles flying around the guy. They were slightly different from the ones that Kinkyu had, but in general, they were similar. The guy asked Gu if he knew that Zia, as an inner disciple who came to the test, ranks first in physical skills. At that moment, Gu stood up and began to approach the guy closer and closer to touch the bubble flying around him. The guy was embarrassed by Gu's behavior and asked him what he was doing, to which Gu replied that everything was really not as it seemed to him. The guy did not believe him and ran out of the building shouting that Shaoyang was a pervert, while Gu shouted after him that he had misunderstood everything. Gu stood in the doorway and thought that everything that was happening was one big misunderstanding, when suddenly he noticed a lot of bubbles flying inside the building, on which there were inscriptions such as life force, attribute of a tree. The guy walked and touched the bubbles with his finger to burst them. He realized that when he punctured the bubbles, his body absorbed everything written on them. The guy was very happy with this outcome of affairs and wondered if he could become the greatest with such powers. Shaoyang was sitting on the floor of his room looking at the blue glowing stone in his hand. He reasoned that it seemed to him that the life force from the bubbles is an attribute that increases the ability to cultivate. Even that low-grade primeval stone that the guy was considering added as much as 97 units of vitality. After absorbing the stone, the original property of the bubble disappears and turns into a countdown. The guy could not understand why he suddenly began to see these bubbles, but since God gave him this opportunity, he decided to use it for his own good. The next day, two guys walking around the square were discussing Gu Shaoyang. One of them could not believe that Shaoyang was a pervert, while the other was glad that Gu had failed the test and would soon be expelled from the sect. Suddenly, the guy heard Shaoyang's voice behind him, calling him by the name of Zhang Hai. Zhang turned around, saw Shaoyang, and immediately ran away from him screaming. Zhang begged Gu to let him go, But Shaoyang only grinned angrily and said that he could not let him go because the guy had what he needed, bubbles. Zhang Hai was running away from Gu Shaoyang and begged him to stop chasing him, to which Shaoyang replied that if Zhang stopped running away, Gu would stop running after him. Shaoyang thought that only by absorbing more tree attribute points as soon as possible would he be able to revive his talent. Otherwise, even if there is more life force, absorbing it would be a waste of time. If Gu leaves the sect, then in the future he may not have the opportunity to absorb attribute points. Suddenly Shaoyang stopped abruptly as he saw a young man near whom a new bubble was flying, previously unknown to him. Gu was so surprised that he stopped chasing Zhang. The young man greeted Shaoyang and smiled benevolently at him. Shaoyang laughed and looked at the guy with a sly squint. The young man was very frightened by this look, and he followed Zhang's example and began to run away from Gu, shouting. Shaoyang started chasing after the two guys and ordered them to stop running away from him, while Zhang, who called the second youth by the name of Wu, asked him about how he ended up in this position. Watching all this from the side, the crowd of students stood in horror and asked someone to stop this outrage. Shaoyang continued to chase after the guys. He called them bastards and asked them to give him some more suck urgently. The guy understood that if he did not absorb their attributes, he would be kicked out of the sect on the same day. Wu and Zhang, who did not know about the existence of bubbles around them, had no idea what Shaoyang meant when he asked them to give a suck. But the version that Gu was a pervert was even stronger in their heads. Suddenly, Zhang stopped and stretched his arm to the left, thereby stopping Wu, who crashed into her and cursed obscenely in pain and surprise. Zhang was surprised out loud that he and Wu were running away from Shaoyang and urged them to stop playing catch-up, because they already have the 6th level of Kai, and Gu has only the 5th, and they can easily defeat him, since they have nothing to fear. Gu, who heard this, stopped abruptly and asked his comrades about why they were running away from him, because he does not eat people. At this time, Wu whispered in Zhang's ear that he had heard that people possessed by a female ghost could suck male yang energy. He also suggested that Gu Shaoyang woke up from a faint quite recently, and it is quite possible that he is possessed and for this reason wanted to inhale the energy of men. After listening to guesses from Wu, Zhang, saying that only his fist could solve everything, began to warm up before the fight. Shaoyang noticed this and thought that he was lucky that Zhang wanted to fight, because now he wouldn't have to worry about how to take the bubbles from him. He said out loud that he was ready to fight and asked about which of the guys would be the first. Zhang replied that no one would want to fight Shaoyang one-on-one and called on all the students to pile on this pervert together. Shaoyang just smiled and said that he was more than satisfied with this arrangement. The guy thought that before he was worried about how he could get close to such a large number of people, but now he would concentrate only on collecting bubbles and not fight head-on. At that moment, while Shaoyang was thinking about it, Zhang was the first to punch him in the face and asked the guy what he was thinking about and noted that he laughed like a girl. Shaoyang got angry, cursed and said that he had not yet expressed his readiness for battle, and thought to himself that he was lucky to have managed to capture Zhang's attribute. Otherwise this injury would have been in vain. Suddenly, a large number of students at once piled on Shaoyang from all sides, simultaneously shouting unflattering things at him. While everyone was beating Shaoyang, he only concentrated on taking the attributes and mentally thought that in the future he would take revenge on them all. However, after gaining a large number of bubbles, the guy realized that his cultivation could not withstand such a number of attribute points. Suddenly, Zia appeared on the street and looked at everyone present with surprise. She asked the students about what they were doing and why they were crowded there. Suddenly, she felt someone grab her shin. The girl looked down and saw Shaoyang there. He was lying on the ground all beaten up and begged Zia to save him. In his hands he held several attributes of different colors. The girl looked at Gu in surprise, and then angrily kicked him so hard that he flew several meters away, and dropped one of the attributes. Shaoyang thought to himself that this blow was mean and he must have hit the girl hard earlier. After all, the girl was the first genius of the inner sect and was responsible for overseeing the outer sect. The guy counted all his attributes and realized that he still lacks them. Zia approached Gu and pointed her sword at him, calling him a bastard, recalling her words that anyone who has not reached the 6th level of Kai can leave the outer sect. In response, Shaoyang quietly said that he was already at the 6th level of Kai imprisonment. In response, the girl said that she is the main disciple of the Green Cloud sect and perfectly sees his level of cultivation. Zia said that at the moment Gu barely reached the 5th level of Kai, and although this is already more than he had at the time of the announcement of the list, the 5th level is the 5th level. She ordered the guy to get out of the sect and mentioned that she would not blame him for what he had done earlier, but if Gu continues to lie and cheat, the girl will destroy his weak cultivation without regret. The other students who were watching Zia and Gu's conversation felt a little sorry for Shaoyang. Zhang said that he was well aware of Shaoyang's strong desire to stay in the sect, but to reach the 6th Kai level before the age of 18 is very important. This rule is necessary before checking whether the student will be able to raise his level in the future. Besides, everyone who wanted to join the sect had to have a level not lower than the 3rd. In response to this, Gu shouted again that he already had the 6th level. Zia looked at Shaoyang with annoyance, but did not have time to say anything, because the guy said that if the girl did not believe him, she could check for herself. The girl called the guy stubborn and reminded him that if he still has not reached the 6th level and continues to lie to her, then she will destroy him. Shaoyang asked what would happen if it turned out that he still achieved the 6th level of Kai. Zia replied that in that case, he would get whatever he wanted. Zia Kinku swore that she would not go back on her word. The students who were watching Zia and Gu whispered to each other and called the guy a loony because he was seriously going to run into big sister Zia. Sister Zia is the first genius in the clan with great talent, and her cultivation has already reached the peak of the Yuan realm. She has only one step left to reach the next realm. In turn, Shaoyang is a disciple of the outer sect, who has already been expelled. The students did not understand how he found the courage to offer a duel to this girl. Hearing these words, the young man was surprised, because he did not offer a duel and thinks that he will pass the test to reach the 6th level of Kai. This meant that he just needed to hold on to the 6th level for as long as possible. The guy examined Zia's bubbles and noticed that she has diligence, vitality, and sword intent. From his experience, the guy decided that vitality is the most important of all attributes. This attribute directly affects the cultivation ability. There is also a root bone that can improve the efficiency of the vital energy that Gu has already absorbed. But the effect of the attribute with the name Sword Intent by Doi Shaoyang remained a mystery. Su ordered the guy to attack her to see his strength, but he refused because he heard that the girl had already reached the peak of the Yuan sphere. Su is 2 spheres higher than Shaoyang, which means that the girl will be able to defeat him with one left hand. The guy mentioned that in this situation it would be difficult for him to show his real strength. The girl replied that she would be able to see the level of Gu only after he made a lunge. Since this is a level test, not a duel, the girl will not take the initiative, and Shaoyang can safely attack her. The girl answered exactly as the guy needed, and he thought about it quite to himself. Gu lunged at the girl with the intention of taking her life force, but Zia dodged very quickly and flexibly, and the guy managed to grab only the bubble with the sword intent. The guy tried to grab the attribute he needed again. Then Zia turned out to be very flexible, and was able to dodge again. The girl pointed the sword at Gu and summarized that he was too poorly prepared and did not pull even to the 5th level. At this time, the guy touched the bubble with the sword intent, and a blue sword aura appeared around him. Zia was offended by the fact that Shaoyang was distracted during the fight and she gave him a savory slap in the face. The guy flew off a few meters along the way shouting obscenities. Zia told Gu that it would be better for him to just give up, turned around and was about to leave, when suddenly Shaoyang stopped her with a shout. The girl looked questioningly at Shaoyang and then he asked her if he should make his move now. The guy quickly ran towards the girl, simultaneously taking the sword from one of the students. Gu sliced through the air with his sword and left a blue trail. Everyone was surprised to see that his sword had an aura. While Sister Zia stood in amazement, Gu took another attribute from her and thanked her for the opportunity to take the test. The guy once again thought about how lucky he was that only he could see the bubbles. The guy could not even think that the sword intent would help him reach the 6th level, and the life force of the best expert of the inner sect would be a gift in honor of overcoming the 6th rank. The girl emotionally began to ask the guy about where he got the aura of the sword. In her opinion, it was impossible, because only people who have been practicing fencing for many years are able to master the aura of the sword, and she did not understand. How could an outer sect disciple create such a thing? In response, the guy just laughed it off and reminded her that the girl promised to do anything if Shaoyang won. Gu joked that he would like to take her place, and now that he had passed the test, the young man could ask for anything. The girl hoped out loud that the guy would have at least a drop of conscience when he took the inner sect test. Gu said that he was joking about the promise given to him by the girl, and in fact grandfather was just afraid that he would be kicked out of the sect, and therefore tripled the competition with Zia. To this, the girl replied that when the guy was released, he would need to go to the inner door and say that he was going to meet her. All the students were very surprised by this answer. Even Shaoyang did not expect such a reaction from Zia, and he felt embarrassed. The guy decided that first he should go to the pavilion of Tibetan scriptures. Gu walked out of the Tibetan scriptures pavilion, holding a scroll in his hands. He thought about how it was a pity that the disciples of the outer sect could only pass to the first level, but the lone assassin sword technique that the guy bought was considered the best. Rumor has it that good practice can even control the energy of the earth. Most of the attributes of the outer sect disciples were absorbed by Shaoyang, as a result of which the essence stone disappeared. In fact, the life force of these items is even more pathetic. In any case, the test of promotion to the courtyard, which will be in half a year, Gu cannot miss in any case. He can only go there to test himself. A few days later, in the Killian Mountains, Gu was testing his guess that monsters also have attributes. His guess turned out to be correct when he met a bear with the attributes rage, protection, and strength. However, the guy did not expect that he would meet a second-rank beast at the very beginning of the mountain. The first and second ranks of monsters on the Tianyuan continent are equal to the Kai imprisonment area, and the third and fourth ranks are equivalent to the Jiayuan area. The fifth and sixth ranks are the Condensed Truth Realm, the seventh and eighth ranks are the Xuan Pill Realm, and in the end, the ninth rank corresponds to the practice of the Shenhai Realm. The bear that Gu was watching was superior to the guy, so he had to be careful in dealing with him. At this time, not far from the place where Gu was, the disciple of the inner sect Hua Shiron, together with the disciples of the outer sect, hacked down the same bear. The disciples of the outer sect said that the one who dared to molest Xia Qinkyu recently went to the Killian Mountains all alone. One of the outer sect disciples accompanying Hua began to recount all the events that took place a few days ago between Gu and Xia. During his story, the student called Sister Xia by name, after which he would immediately receive a slap in the face from an angry Hua Shiron. The man was outraged that an outer sect disciple dared to call Sister Xia by name. The enraged Shiron, having learned that now Shaoyang can ask Xia anything, wanted to know where the guy is now. At this time, Gu was fighting with the bear in order to get his attributes. The guy realized that he was not able to overcome the bear and he needed to at least try to take over as many attributes of the monster as possible. During the fight with the bear, Gu used the lone killer sword technique and was able to take down the beast with one blow. Fortunately, most of the attributes of demonic beasts are external, so the guy absorbed the bubbles of the bear in order to weaken it. But he could not even think that the attribute of rage could be so strong. Gu regretted that this beast didn't have the attributes of life force and assumed that it was because of its low level. At that moment, footsteps and a voice could be heard behind the guy, who was surprised that the disciple of the outer sect, who was going to be expelled 2 days ago, was hanging on the 5th level of Kai, was now able to bring down the beast alone. Shaoyang turned around in surprise at the voice. The guy mockingly said that he was even surprised that Gu was actually able to reach the 6th level and asked Shaoyang to tell him about how he did it. In response, Gu rudely asked the man about who he was. In response, he was told that the elder brother Hua Shiron, who is among the top 30 disciples of the inner sect, is standing in front of him, and when such a person says something, it is better to answer right away. Shaoyang apologized to this and said that he did not even remember the 2nd place. What can I say from the 30th? Shiron was angry that Gu was so sarcastic and ordered his escorts to teach a lesson to Shaoyang. 2 men and 1 girl with swords began to attack Gu, but he, using the attribute of rage, rushed past the attackers with great speed. Hua Shiron's bodyguards suggested that this speed was due to the fact that the guy could be a body cultivator. Gu reflected that he had spent a lot of effort on the bears, and the 3 people attacking him were at least at the 8th level of Kai imprisonment, if not more. And although Shaoyang managed to dodge the blow, there was an inner sect disciple waiting in front of him, whose level was unknown to Gu. Gu said that he had never met Brother Hua before and did not know him, so he offered to say directly what Shiron needed from Gu. To this question, Shiron replied that although Shaoyang had no contact with Hua, Shiron wanted to help Xia Qinkyu avoid the shameful promise to become a hero. Hua suggested that the girl would be so grateful to him that she might have feelings and it would be a wonderful story. Shaoyang quickly realized that Shiron wanted Gu dead. Hua replied that Shaoyang went to the Killian mountain range alone, being at the 6th level of Kai, and in this situation it would be more logical if his bones were eaten by monsters. At that moment, Gu pointed his finger behind Hua's back and said in surprise that Sister Xia had also come to the mountains. Shiron turned his head, but saw no one there. He turned around and realized that Gu had used a distraction and managed to hide while Hua was looking the other way. Gu, who climbed a tree, shouted that Xia Qinkyu was even ready to cut off the head of Hua's dog in order to fulfill the promise made to Shaoyang. After these words, Gu disappeared. Hua ordered his men to chase him and said that Gu had gone deep into the Killian mountains. Shaoyang deftly jumped from branch to branch, running away from the inner sect disciples who were chasing him. Nu was thinking that the top 30 inner sect disciples should already be in the Jiayuan realm, and the 3 Hua bodyguards had most likely already reached the 8th Kai level. The guy realized that he did not have the slightest chance to win in a fair fight. Running past the snake, the young man realized that even if his speed attribute was absorbed, he would not be able to resist them. Gu realized that if he was given at least another month of preparation, he would be able to defeat them without any problems. Anyway, at the moment, the guy only had the opportunity to hide in the mountains from his pursuers and check whether Gu could use the power of monster beasts to defeat opponents. At this time, a beautiful girl with pink hair was walking among the trees in the mountains. Someone in black ninja-like clothes was watching her from one of the trees. Suddenly, the girl stopped and asked aloud why those with whom she came to the meeting were delayed. A man watching her from a tree launched a rocket into the air, shouting that the target had been detected and he needed reinforcements. The man was calling to the heavenly palace of heavenly warriors. After that, the spy jumped down from the tree and was about to attack the girl from behind, holding a spear in his hands. However, she turned around and asked if the person who attacked her was calling someone, hit him with 2 attacks. The attacker flew into the trunk of a tree, behind which, as it turned out, Shaoyang was hiding. The guy held his breath and assumed that he had met some kind of terrible monster. He thought to himself that the woman standing in front of him was too strong and he had not met such people before. The guy looked at the spy killed by the girl lying next to him and saw his attribute. He realized that the person was above the Jiayuan realm, which meant that the girl he met was in the condensed truth realm. Suddenly, several dozen samurai dressed like the one who attacked her gathered around the girl. The girl was surprised by the number of people sent to catch her. The girl asked the leader if they wanted to keep the palace. To this, she was told that the princess was all alone in the Killian Mountains and this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Plus, the girl's pedigree looks very tempting. The princess replied that she had heard that the heavenly palace is full of masters and even a little heavenly warrior must have a Jiayuan sphere to enter. The girl wondered who was standing in front of her, one of the 4 great officials of the Yuan kingdom or one of the 12 gods. At this time, Gu took the attribute of the killed samurai and hid his body in the bushes. The wanderer of the god of day replied that he offered his deepest apologies to the princess and asked her to follow him to meet with Master Xinjun. A girl with a defiantly sly expression asked about what would happen if she refused to go with them. She was told that in this case, they would have to lead the princess by force and several samurai went towards the girl. The girl cursed and told Xinjun to come to her himself. The god of the day replied that such an important matter had been reported to the heavenly officials and it was expected that Master Xinjun was aware of where the princess was. Shaoyang, who was still hiding behind the tree, absorbed the attribute energy in large quantities. At the same time, on the other side, the 3 accompanying Hua were looking for Shaoyang and wondered how he could escape so quickly, because the guy was only at the 6th level of Kai. The girl said out loud that she was afraid to be in the mountains because they could meet more powerful monsters and she was not sure she could defeat them. In response, another escort called her a coward and reminded her that Brother Hua was already in the middle of the Jiayuan sphere, and they had nothing to fear. Suddenly, a noise was heard nearby in the forest and the birds abruptly flew into the sky. The disciples of the sect paid attention to this and decided that the guy had met a monster, so they ran in that direction. When they arrived there, they saw Shaoyang hiding behind a tree and were already preparing to attack him. Hua shouted, "Gu Shaoyang, die!" Jumped out of the bushes at the guy, holding a sword in his hands. Shaoyang recoiled and rejoiced that everything was going according to his plan, decided that the matter remained small. The guy ran out to the princess and the ninjas surrounding her in large numbers. Gu shouted that there was a murderer, pointing his finger at Hua and his escorts. Shaoyang said they killed the samurai and hid him in the bushes. The god of the day asked Hua and his bodyguards about who they were. Excited, Gu shouted to the people to answer as soon as possible. Hua realized that the people standing in front of him were masters and he shouldn't talk too much. Hua Shuron introduced himself by name and said that he was a disciple of the nearby Qingyun sect. The guy mentioned that he and his entourage had an order to capture an external disciple of Gu Shaoyang, who had also been expelled from the sect earlier. To this, Gu indignantly shouted that it was all a lie and he didn't even know Shuron. The god of the day said the guys were making too much noise and ordered everyone to be killed. Gu fussed and asked with fear in his voice not to kill them, because it was too cruel, but it was too early for the samurai and they started attacking the students. Hua and his entourage swore obscenely at the fact that they were being pressed because of Gu and decided that they needed to get out of the forest as soon as possible. Shaoyang noticed that all the warriors who attacked him were practitioners of the Jiayuan sphere, and he should not fight them without a plan. He looked at the princess and realized that, apparently, she was not for one with the attackers. In other words, behind her back, Gu would be the safest. Shaoyang ran towards the girl, and she looked at him with an angry look. Well, he noticed that the princess had a murderous aura and he felt uneasy. Gu was surprised to notice that the girl he met in Lechu and behind whose back he was trying to hide had the attribute of a murderous aura. Shaoyang remembered that the sword aura that he took from Xia Kinkyu helped him a lot that time, so he must get the princess attribute in order to survive. The guy attacked the girl of the lone assassin's sword technicians and ran up to her attribute. Gu had almost taken the bubble when suddenly the girl pushed him away from her. However, for Gu's luck, he still managed to pick up the attribute at the last moment. Shaoyang was filled with the power of the attribute. The princess noticed that Gu had mastered the killing aura and couldn't figure out how he got her ability. The samurai noticed that Shaoyang had the same aura as the princess, which could mean that he was related to blood, so they couldn't let him go. The girl heard these words and decided that Gu was her relative. The samurai started attacking the princess, but she brushed them off with a single movement of her hand. The god of the day started attacking the princess and said that he had heard that 3 years ago the princess had reached the peak of the condensed truth realm. So now, after defeating the princess, he would be able to feel the full power of her blood. The girl attacked the god of the day in response and said that he would never be able to defeat her because it was not in his power. Hua, who overheard their conversation, decided that the princess was probably a reincarnation of blood. The girl accompanying him asked Chiron about what he meant. Hua replied that the people who made this rebirth have a special talent that all immortal cultivators dream of. The ability of such people to cultivate is also different, and the speed is several times higher than that of ordinary people. If such people manage to survive, they will surpass the Shenhai sphere in strength, and survival in this case is the main condition. According to legend, Blood is an ancient evil creature. She recognized only one person as her partner for life and remained faithful to him until the end. The person capable of reincarnating her must be a genius. That was until the Holy Land discovered an effect called elixir. Several great masters found out about it when they added blood to their pills. The effect that came out could help them surpass the Shenhai sphere. Since then, blood reincarnations were no longer considered geniuses. Each reborn was sent to the Holy Land, where they were raised as an elixir. Since they are constantly reincarnating, they were considered a constant source. But the materials for the elixir, that is, the children, found out about their fate and ran away. Every rebirth is reflected in the sky by a murderous star, so when the blood entered the mortal world, the Holy Land went hunting and in the end the entire dynasty was destroyed. Hua shouted to Gu Shaoyang that if he was really related to blood, then the sect, upon learning about it, would definitely expel him. The guy was surprised when he realized that the girl whose aura he took was a blood reincarnator. Thus, when Gu absorbed her murderous aura, the samurai mistook Shaoyang for one of the dynasty. Shaoyang was glad that the princess gave him a break by fighting with the god of the day. The god of the day was flying from the next attack of the princess and had to fall to the ground, but someone's hand deftly caught him. It turned out to be the Lord of Heaven. All the samurai and the god of the day himself knelt before him and were very glad that the Lord had finally arrived. The man said that the blood had not appeared for 3 years and apparently the team of the god of the day had done a good job in order to find it, so upon returning to the heavenly palace, he would be rewarded. Pleiadica said that he would deal with the princess himself and was about to talk about the students, when suddenly Hua interrupted him. He introduced himself and his entourage and said that he was ready to gladly assist in the capture of blood. Pleiadica said that he was familiar with the 4 great clans and was surprised to meet their disciples. Hua, pointing his finger at Gu, said that he had done a lot of bad things in the sect and Chiron was chasing him by order. But in the process he accidentally interfered with the samurai and the god of the day. Gu realized that now there was one more strong monster and he needed to run while there was still such an opportunity, because then it would be too late. The Lord ordered the samurai and the god of day to catch Gu when they rushed in pursuit of him. However, the princess attacked the god of the day, justifying it by saying that they had not finished yet. But the Lord stopped Princess King Luan, saying that he was now her opponent. The Lord summarized that the devil from the Yuan kingdom protects a child who has reached the Kai prison area, and asked King if Gu has a chance to escape from the samurai of the heavenly palace. The god of the day stands alone in the middle of the forest and examines the area around, looking for Gu. At this moment, the guy hides behind one of the trees and reflects that he definitely did not think that even after absorbing the monster's agility attribute, he would not be able to break away from the god of the day. Shaoyang looks again at the place where his pursuer stood earlier, but he is not there. The guy decides that the god of the day has left, and with the words "it seems safe" comes out of his hiding place. At this moment, the god of day, who is actually hiding in that very tree, jumps on Shaoyang from above, intending to kill him. Gu smiles as if that's all he needed and deftly dodges the attack to the side. The god of the day notices that he found himself in a small pit with eggs that he himself had just broken. Gu quipped about the preparedness of the gods, in particular the god of the day, and asked if he hunts him or steals eggs. The opponent replied that he thought that Gu had prepared a trap against him, but before he could finish, a huge snake jumped out from the side and pressed the god of day to the trunk of a tree, wrapping its long body around him. Shaoyang said that the monster in front of him is a python that has reached the 4th rank, and now its strength is at the level of the Jiayuan region. He also added that this beast always appears when someone wants to covet his nest. Gu joked that the god of day was frivolous when he broke the eggs of this monster and advised him to get ready to feel the full fury of a demonic beast of the 4th rank. The snake opened its mouth and was about to attack the god of day, when suddenly he stopped it with just a movement of his hand. The god of day said that such a pitiful monster of only the 4th level is not capable of defeating him. Shaoyang stood on the snake's head and said that it would not be the beast that would fight him, but he. At that moment, the guy took the attributes dexterity, bloodlust, and strength from the monster and swung his sword with the words "murderers are always waiting for payback." The attack cut the beast and hit the god of the day, but not critically. The opponent said that Gu made a fatal mistake when he decided to use Python in order to get rid of him, because Shaoyang did not take into account that in order to become one of the 12 gods of the wanderers of the Yuanya kingdom in the heavenly palace, one must reach the sphere of condensed truth. In response, Gu called the words of the god of the day nonsense and said that his opponent most likely noticed that he was slowing down and was now just stalling until the arrival of the other samurai. The god of day replied that a pitiful boy like Gu with the level of only the Kai confinement area could not defeat him. After these words, the opponent fell to the ground exhausted. Shaoyang said that his sword was soaked in the poison of the king cobra and he kept it for Hua Shiran. But if not for the sword, Gu would not have been able to defeat the god of day. Shaoyang concluded to himself that unfortunately, after moving to the level of the sphere of condensed truth, Kai cultivation becomes more internal, which means there are no bubbles with life force around the god of the day. Shaoyang decided to take the mask of the god wanderer of the heavenly palace, as it could possibly be useful to him in the future. Suddenly, Hua Shiran and his 3 escorts ran out of the forest. They noticed the slain god of the day and were a little scared of Gu. However, Hua said that even he at the level of the Jiayuan region would not see the power of the god of day, and such a worthless disciple like Gu would not be able to kill him. Hua decided that the god of the day was most likely fighting with a python, and Shaoyang viciously attacked from behind. Gu said that this version sounds interesting, but it was he who set the demonic beast on the god of the day. Hua ordered his escorts to catch Shaoyang and deliver him to the Lord of Heaven, and the 3 disciples, following his order, immediately ran towards Gu in order to attack him. A murderous aura appeared around Shaoyang. The guy was not at all afraid of the fact that 2 students of at least the 8th level of Kai imprisonment were running straight at him. Gu lifted them into the air in one motion, and then dropped them to the ground. Hua, who saw this, shouted that it was impossible, that there was no owner of the 6th level of Kai in front of him. Otherwise, how could he overturn such strong opponents 2 ranks higher than him with one wave of his hand? Shaoyang replied that he still could not understand why they were trying to kill him. Gu guesses that Hua wants to please Sister Zia, and it turns out that Shiran can kill someone he sees for the first time without looking, even if he does not hold a grudge against him. Hua replied that since the guy wants to know the reason so much, he should take into account his weakness and the fact that killing him is the easiest option. After these words, Shiran ran towards Gu with a sword to attack. Shaoyang noticed that Shiran is in the middle of the Yuan sphere, which means that Gu will not be able to defeat him head-on. Because Hua has much more energy, which means Shaoyang will have to finish quickly. Gu should grab a chance to piss him off and hit him with all his might. After thinking it over, Gu shouted defiantly to Hua that if he wanted to kill him, then let him try. Hua abruptly rushed to Gu, but he ran away very quickly. Shiran did not understand how this was possible, because such a speed is at least the level of technology of the earth. Shaoyang, who was sitting on a tree, asked Hua about whether a disciple entering the top 30 could not keep up with an outer sect disciple going for promotion. In fact, the Python attributes that Shaoyang absorbed accelerated him even more. The angry Hua shouted that the guy would still beg his forgiveness on his knees and ran at him with a sword. At that moment, Gu ran down from the tree, pleased that everything was going according to his plan. Now he was interested to see how much stronger he had become. The swords of the two guys collided and Shaoyang's sword cut Hua's sword in two. After that, Chiron flew off and fell to the ground. Gu put a sword to Hua's throat and asked what it was like to be beheaded by a disciple like me, calling Hua a master. Chiron started shouting again that what was happening was impossible, because Shaoyang was only at the 6th level of studying Kai, and he was in the middle of a Kai meeting, and the guy simply could not defeat him with one blow. Shaoyang thought that the combination of those abilities that he had already managed to collect could even defeat someone like Hua at once. But Shaoyang said out loud that he did not expect Hua to be so weak. Chiron thought that although he was careless, it seems Shaoyang himself did not expect that he would be able to repel his strongest attack. Hua shouted that he had fallen into Gu's hands by carelessness, calling him a brat, and urged him to fight once for once if he was not a coward. Gu, with the words "tell this to Satan," was about to cut Hua's throat when he suddenly heard a noise approaching them. They were samurai from the heavenly castle. They were looking for Shaoyang. Well, I realized that the heavenly soldiers will now find him and Hua. At that moment, while Shaoyang was abstractly thinking about what to do, Chiron, having injured himself, got out from under Gu's sword and ran away. He shouted to Gu Shaoyang to wait for him on his return to the clan and wished him to die. The soldiers of the heavenly castle heard this and ran towards the guy. Well, I thought that Hua was really ruthless to himself, because he even hurt himself on purpose, just to get away. Shaoyang thought that there were too many heavenly soldiers and an official who did not know the kingdom, and the guy should also retire. Gu thought that with his new speed, he could easily escape from his pursuers, but he remembered that it seemed to him that the princess had helped him escape. Gu thought that he should forget about that girl and run if his life is precious to him, because he will not be able to fight with that official. However, a sense of duty and honor prevented Gu from escaping, and he returned to the place where the battle was going on. Standing on a tree, he observed the terrain. It's a strange thing, but everyone went somewhere and it was not clear who won. Shaoyang thought that it didn't matter to him, because now he could safely return to the clan, since it was still dangerous in the mountains. With these thoughts, the guy was about to descend from the tree to the ground, but suddenly he felt the presence of someone else behind him. Gu quickly recognized the aura of the Lord of Heaven and was dumbfounded in fear. The person behind him asked Gu if he was the guy the princess was trying to save. Shaoyang asked again, as if he hadn't heard the question. Judging by the guy's face, it was given to him with great difficulty. Vladika asked if Gu had returned to save the girl who had protected him and called it touching. Still terrified, Shaoyang didn't say a word. There was only one thought in his head: run. But after trying to pull away from the place, he immediately returned back at the behest of the wave of the Lord's hand. The guy fell to the ground and screamed in pain. Shaoyang lay motionless and timidly looked at the Lord standing over him. He said that now he would check if the princess would come to Shaoyang's aid. Well, he quickly jumped to his feet and began to assure the gentleman that he was mistaken. Shaoyang said that he was just a minor disciple who had never even heard the name of the master, and the master could safely let him go. To which the Lord of Heaven replied that he needed to check one thing. To Gu's counter question about what he meant, the gentleman replied that Yan King was well aware of the significance of her blood affiliation for the Holy Land. But why, in that case, she left the palace and moved to the Kilian Mountains alone. Gu asked the Lord if Niu had heard the word palace, to which the Lord asked Shaoyang if he did not know that the girl was a princess, the daughter of the Yan Emperor of the Great Yuan Kingdom, Yan King. Now that Gu understood the reason why the girl had grown up so well, the bishop turned to Shaoyang and asked him to allow him to confirm his fears. Gu thought that this was impossible, because the girl could not come to his aid in any way. Apparently, the man was going to hit the guy. Shaoyang had already accepted that today was his last day, when suddenly a princess appeared between him and the Lord and stopped the Lord's attack. Shaoyang could not believe his eyes while the Lord asked the princess about why she had returned, because she had already managed to avoid danger. The girl didn't answer anything, and Gu thought that apparently the old man guessed correctly. Vladika told Shaoyang that he was blessed, to which he raised an eyebrow in perplexity. The princess, turning to the Lord, called him an old man and said that he was talking too much and it was time to get down to business. The girl prepared to attack the Lord of the Royal Dragon Kai and struck first. But the Lord was able to put out his hand in time and defend himself. The Lord said that the Royal Dragon Kai is really strong. However, if the girl wants to defeat him, it's not enough. With these words, the Lord attacked her and the girl decided to take the blow, which surprised the Lord inexpressibly. At this time, Gu, who was watching the fight, did not know what to do if even the princess could not fight with the Lord. Suddenly, a girl's attribute with the inscription Royal Dragon Kai flew in his direction. HZ took it in his hands, and the energy of the attribute, along with its enormous power, began to penetrate into the guy, creating an aura around him. The master began to attack the girl with the words, "With this blow I will break your royal dragon Kai." With a wild look of a madman, the lord began to shout that he was going to destroy the princess today. Suddenly, Gu stood between the princess and the lord, and with the words, "Dreaming, old man," raised a sword to them, from which the aura of royal dragon Kai emanated. The guy shouted that now, with all the strength he had gathered, the sword in his hands is the strongest weapon, stronger even than the one that Hua Shiran was waving, and with the words, "Give me your life," the guy waved the blade. Vladika looked at the guy and indignantly asked him how he dared to attack the master. The man said he could handle Gu with one hand and put his palm forward to stop the guy's attack. But to the surprise of the lord, the sword still cut him and the lord could not defend himself. This angered the man, and he again indignantly shouted that Shaoyang did not dare to do this. At that moment, the princess decided that now was a great opportunity to attack the lord, because he was careless. The girl used a blow, after which blood poured out of the gentleman's mouth, and the mask fell off his face. At that moment, the princess abruptly grabbed Shaoyang by the hand and shouted, "Let's go," and began to run away with him. After the princess and Gu had moved to a safe distance, they stopped to decide what the next course of action would be. The girl said that her blow wounded the officer, so he would not follow them temporarily. The girl told Shaoyang to return to the King Yun sect faster. Gu asked the princess about what would happen to her and what she would do. The girl replied that she was the ruler of the great Yuan country, King Luan, and of course, someone would take the girl back. The guy asked the girl to be careful, because that devil in the person of the lord could catch up with her at any moment. The princess appreciated Gu's concern for her. The guy was about to leave, when suddenly the girl stopped him and said that she still did not know his name. The guy introduced himself by his name and said that he was a disciple of the outer sect, but now he has every chance to become an inner disciple. The princess thanked Shaoyang for saving her life. In response, Gu awkwardly reminded that in fact, first the girl returned in order to save him. Shaoyang asked the girl why she came back, because even the old devil suspected that the princess would want to come to Gu's aid. Before the guy could finish, two giant birds appeared in the sky with samurai riders on them. The girl said that these people had come for her. The guys jumped from the birds down to the ground to the princess. As soon as the men landed, they knelt down and bowed their heads in front of the girl. The most important of them said that he was sorry that he was late and scared the princess, and believes that he deserves to die for his offense. He also added that he would like to ask the princess to return to the palace, and reported that he had sent people to search the place to prevent the demon from escaping. After that, the princess and three samurai climbed on the birds and flew away to the castle. Gu still stood and watched them fly away for a while, and then went to his King Yun sect. Standing at the entrance to the sect, Gu thought that he was glad that he had finally returned. Walking inside the sect, Shaoyang thought that he wanted to get out in order to gather some vital energy to speed up his cultivation, and in the end he did something completely different. Gu decided that from now on, it was better for him to go out less and stay in the sect to calmly gain strength. Suddenly, one of the disciples of the Zhanghai sect ran up to Gu. He greeted Gu and asked him about where he had been, assuming that Shaoyang was training. He reminded them that there were 3 days left before the semi-annual inner sect exam and they could not miss it. In response, Shaoyang raised his eyebrows in surprise and said that if Brother Zhanghai had not reminded him of this, Gu would not have remembered about the exam. The guy approached Shaoyang and asked him in his ear if he had offended anyone outside. Gu asked about what happened in his absence. Zhanghai replied that only yesterday, someone from the inner sect came to find out about Shaoyang's whereabouts. After hearing this, Gu realized that Hua Shiran had returned to the sect earlier. Hearing this, Zhanghai was surprised and asked how Brother Gu could have a grudge against Hua Shiran from the inner sect. Shaoyang only replied that it didn't matter and he was going to follow him too. Zhanghai said that Hua Shiran is the 28th ranked expert in the inner sect and reminded that inner sect disciples can easily kill outer sect disciples, so it's better not to provoke them. Gu thanked Zhanghai for reminding Shaoyang about this and promised to avoid Hua Shiran from now on. However, Gu thought about the fact that Brother Zhang is not aware of the current level of Shaoyang's cultivation, so he should just accept his good intentions. Zhanghai also added that they were lucky that the outer sect is such a bad place that it is not so easy to find someone in it, and promised to ask the others not to disclose Shaoyang's whereabouts. Suddenly, Zhanghai remembered that there was another person who was interested in Shaoyang's whereabouts. Gu was surprised and said he didn't remember him offending such a large number of people. Zhanghai condescendingly said that Gu is very forgetful, and reminded that last time Shaoyang very humiliated one girl, quarreled with her and now he owes her. Gu immediately realized that Zhang Hai was talking about Sister Zia and asked him what she wanted from Shaoyang. Zhang Hai said that he did not have such information and Shaoyang had better ask the girl about it himself. After these words, the guy turned around and left. Shaoyang thought that there was no need for him to ask Sister Zia about what she wanted from him. 3 days later, the disciples of the outer sect crowded at the entrance to the temple, waiting for the semi-annual examination in the inner sect. Sister Zia came out to the students and asked for silence. The girl was holding a scroll in her hands. The girl announced that this time, those who took the first 10 places during the external semi-annual exam will receive pristine stones of average quality. The first 3 places will be pills for Kai cultivation. The winner of the first place will receive a high-level technique. Sister Zia also announced that only those whose level has reached the 6th level of Kai imprisonment can participate in the exam. Participants should demonstrate their abilities in less time. Sister Zia announced the first round, the alley with wooden warriors. The first participant was Tan Ming. Zhang Hai told Gu that brother Tang Ming almost got into the inner sect during the last exam and is now at the 9th level of Kai imprisonment. Shaoyang asked a friend if Tang Ming had a chance to get into the inner sect this time. The guy replied that, according to rumors, the 6th level is enough to pass the first round, but in fact, even the owner of the 7th level will have to sweat. Gu thought that the points depend on the time of passing, which means you will need to go ahead. At this time, the sect lord sitting on the throne asked Sister Zia if it was true that she had lost the argument. According to him, one brat from the outer sect was able to deal with Zia with his bare hands, and this interested the gentleman. The girl immediately understood why the master wanted to attend this exam. The gentleman asked the girl if she had reached the stage of the condensed truth sphere. Sister Zia replied that she had achieved it. The master said that Bai Linjiang from the Baixu sect, Jai Xuan from the Hanyu sect reached this level faster than a girl. The master asked Sister Zia about her chances of winning the tournament of the 4 great sects. The girl convinced the master that there was nothing to worry about, because she would make every effort. The master said that Sister Zia was rumored to practice secret techniques and asked if she was doing this in order to reach the late stage of Kai accumulation. The girl did not answer the master, while he said that Bai Mingsu is the best disciple of the Baixu sect. However, by the standards of the great Yuan country, he is at the very end. And let it be a simple tournament among sects, it's worth showing your best side no matter what, because that's how you can win. Even Gu Shaoyang, who is at the 6th level of Kai imprisonment, was able to defeat the girl. Sister Zia bowed and said that she understood the master and thanked him for his advice. The master said that even though Sister Zia is the strongest in Qingyun, but faced with the demands of this world, the girl's cultivation will not pass the test. The gentleman suggested that the girl watch the exam. Maybe the appearance of Gu Shaoyang would benefit her. At this time, Tang Ming came out of the testing room. The students noted that even 2 sticks of incense did not have time to burn during the time Tang Ming passed the test. He passed it so quickly. The students were confident that Tang Ming would take the first place. Gu Shaoyang was announced next. Gu decided that since he wanted to get inside, he shouldn't hide his strength. Entering the room, the guy saw a lot of wooden devices imitating people. What was Shaoyang's surprise when he realized that these wooden fighters are filled with strength, which makes them stronger. The guy noted that this move is brilliant. Seeing a lot of attributes, the guy was delighted and thought that these devices were simply created to increase his strength. Shaoyang decided that in this case he should not hold back and started collecting bubbles with life force. After absorbing the life force, the wooden opponents' bodies became less sturdy and now it was even easier to defeat them. But in this case, the guy was interested to find out how long it would take him to pass this round. To the surprise of all the students, Gu Shaoyang left the room while half of the wand had not even had time to burn. The students could not understand how the guy managed to pass the test so quickly and decided that he could cheat. An observer who had looked around the room ran out and told Sister Zia that all the wooden warriors had been destroyed. The master was surprised and asked how this was possible. The guy said that each of the warriors was blown to pieces and it was impossible to continue the exam. The master said that this was impossible because each of the warriors was at the 6th level of Kai imprisonment, and their total energy is even greater. You can pass them only with the help of a strategy, because no one will think of going ahead. The master called Sister Zia to follow him so that they could see what had happened. Having entered the testing room and examined all the wooden warriors, the master came to the conclusion that the sword technique had definitely tried here, and apparently Shaoyang simply attacked everyone who was in front of him, even without dodging them in any way. The master asked the watchman about who did it. The guy replied that it was the work of Gu Shaoyang. Gu Shaoyang awkwardly greeted Master and Sister Zia. Enraged, Zia ordered the guy to urgently tell him what kind of devilish technique he used that destroyed all the wooden guards. Shaoyang said that it looks like the problem lies in the quality of the wooden apparatuses, since Gu only slightly hit the figures, and they collapsed. Zia shouted that it was impossible, as the elder himself was increasing their strength. She asked Gu about how he could have dealt with them so easily while being at the 6th level of Kai imprisonment. The master said that Gu is not at the 6th level of Kai comprehension. He is already at the 9th. The students were shocked when they heard this. The sister could not believe the words of the master, because she herself checked Shaoyang only a month ago. It is impossible to jump from the 6th level to the 9th in 1 month. Teacher Zia, called a genius who is born once in 100 years, took 2 years to get from the 6th level to the 9th. A month ago it was a dream, but now. Du Shaoyang said that he went to the Tibetan scriptures pavilion and learned the lone assassin sword technique. Then went to the Kilian Mountains and by a lucky chance came across 2 9th level spellcasters. Sister Zia thought that a month ago Gu had already used the sword technique, reached the 9th level of Kai comprehension and mastered the lone assassin sword technique. And if he hit harder, then someone like Shaoyang could destroy all the pieces of wood. Only Sister Zia was bothered by the fact that Gu was able to achieve this in just a month, and was able to change so much. The master just laughed and said that it was pretty good that the guy had risen 3 levels in a month. And even if Shaoyang thought it was an accident, but luck also depends on innate potential. The King Yuan sect seemed to have received a blessing from heaven and another genius appeared in it. The elder patted Shaoyang on the shoulder and instructed him to continue in the same spirit in the next round. Gu thanked Elder Lin for his praise and promised to try his best. The master ordered his subordinate to tell everyone to go to the second site for the next stage of the exam. At this time, Tang Ming was glaring angrily at Gu Shaoyang from the crowd. He noticed that what was happening did not match the data he received, because Gu had already reached the 9th level of Kai comprehension. But with the secret pill that Mr. Hua gave him, he could easily defeat the guy. As soon as Gu dies, Tang Ming will enter the inner sect and receive the support of Hua Shuron. The next day, it was announced that those who passed the first round would compete in 8 arenas for the right to get into the top 10 for several days. The second stage was a one-on-one fight. The guy Shaoyang was supposed to fight asked Gu to be gentle. Sister Zia, who was watching this, thought that after the results of the first round, everyone looked at Gu Shaoyang with new eyes. I wonder if Shaoyang will be able to take first place in single combats as well. Shaoyang shouted to his opponent to be careful and go on the attack. With great speed, Gu walked around the guy and he admitted that he had lost. The person in charge of announcing the results announced that Gu Shaoyang had won. The same fate awaited Shaoyang in the next 6 rounds. The disciples began chanting Gu Shaoyang's name, and the master praised the young man and said that he had no equal in the outer sect. The master decided that Shaoyang would need to assign a good teacher when he got into the inner sect. Finally, the last fight was announced, which will determine the winner. Gu Shaoyang versus Tang Ming. A crowd of students chanted Gu Shaoyang's name in support of him. Tang Ming said he didn't expect Gu Shaoyang to make it to the finals. In response to this, Shaoyang condescendingly folded his hands and said that he was just lucky and brother Tang would certainly win, because he was the last one who would be so easy to defeat. Tan shouted that he could not just give up the winner's place and went on the attack. Shaoyang looked at Tang with a grin and asked him to teach him a lesson. The master who was watching the fight was surprised when he realized that Shaoyang had already mastered the intention of the sword. The students also noticed it and remembered that Zia used it in a fight with Sister Zia. Tan shouted that he had never seen this technique before. Gu's opponent also noticed that his speed had increased significantly. Just a little more and he would overtake Tang. Shaoyang ran past Ming, and a trail of fire left behind him on the ground. After that, at the place of the trace, the earth broke in half and a crevice formed. All the students watching the duel were shocked. Tang Ming wondered how there could be such a big difference in strength between them, because Hua Shuron said that Shaoyan was at the 6th level of Kai imprisonment. While Tang Ming was thinking about this, Shaoyang ran past him and delivered a strong blow to the opponent's face. Tang Ming flew a few meters away and realized that it looked like he would have to use the thing that Hua Shuron had given him. He pulled out a small ball, a secret pill that increases strength 100-fold at the decisive moment of the fight. Shuron promised that with this thing, Tang would easily kill Shaoyang. Hua was angry and intended to show Gu what happens when someone crosses his path. Shuron also warned Tang that if he tried to cheat, he would arrange for him a fun life in the inner sect. Tan thought about what he should do and swallowed the pill in one gulp. Suddenly, he was bursting with energy and light coming from inside. His body began to be filled with the strongest energy. The master noticed that Tang Ming had taken that pill. The girl asked the master what kind of pill he was talking about. The gentleman said that he was talking about the pill that Sister Xia had previously called too dangerous. The master told me that he spent half his life making immortality pills, so he knows what he's talking about. Therefore, recently, the gentleman has become less and less likely to accept them. Each elixir or pill has not only healing properties, but also side effects. Usually cultivators use a small amount of warming pills that help in everyday life in order to absorb Kai energy from the world faster. In this case, the harm to the body is not great. Secret pills also only increase the rate of energy absorption, but you realize that they also do more harm. But if there are pills that release the full potential of the human body and can raise the cultivation stage in a second, help break through to the next level and release all the Kai of the cultivator's body in the most painful way. While the master was telling this, Tang Ming was screaming from the pain caused by the effect of the pill. Sister Xia asked the gentleman if she should intervene. The master replied that Tang Ming's body had darkened, which means that the strength of the pill is too high, and it has accumulated in his meridians. The damage had already been done and all of his cultivation had gone to waste. The master told Sister Xia to watch Tang Ming carefully, because if in the future the girl meets an enemy that she cannot defeat and wants to use this way, she will face the same end. Sister Xia watched in horror. Gu Shaoyang told Tang Ming that with his strength, Brother Tang would be guaranteed a place in the inner sect. He asked Min about whether taking the pill was worth it to be the first. In response to this, the monster that Tang Ming turned into shouted about how Hua Shiran dared to harm him. Gu Shaoyang asked about Tang Ming about whether Hua Shiran had given him this pill, to which he replied that he thought that if he helped Shiran, he would help him enter the inner sect. Before Tang Ming could finish speaking, he screamed again in terrible pain. Gu Shaoyang noted that Tang Ming had changed a lot in appearance. Now Tan was completely out of his mind. He turned into a terrible monster, into a monster that indiscriminately attacked everyone in a row, and at the moment its target was Gu Shaoyang. He attacked him and almost tore him with his claws. Gu Shaoyang asked Brother Tang to come to his senses, but he no longer heard him. He was all red and furious. Gu Shaoyang noticed that due to the fact that Tang Ming's Kai burst out, bubbles appeared around him. But the attributes were a strange color. The inscription on them read cursed energy. Shaoyang saw such an attribute for the first time and was not sure whether to absorb it. Gu thought that even though Tang Ming was trying to kill him, he had already suffered. Gu even felt sorry for him. The master noticed that this pill had let the cursed energy into Tang Ming's body and ordered the guards to stop him. Gu Shaoyang said that the tank was lucky because he was not going to save the guy and he was just interested in his attributes. Suddenly, Tang Ming tried to attack Gu Shaoyang again, but he quickly dodged the attack by increasing his speed. Shaoyang took Tang's bubble and squeezed it in his hands. Sister Xia appeared on the battlefield and told Gu to be careful since Tang had taken the cursed pill. Nu Shaoyang turned towards Sister Xia and it became clear that he had taken over the cursed energy. Shaoyang attacked Sister Xia and she flew back a little. The master came to the rescue and asked the girl what the problem was and whether she could not cope with Shaoyang. Tang Ming turned back into an ordinary person and fell to the ground. Sister Xia assured the master that everything was fine and she was just distracted. The master asked her to be more attentive. The girl looked at the guy's expression and noticed that he was already fine. The guy ran towards Sister Xia and warned her that Tang Ming was not herself and she should be more careful. He asked the girl to examine the guy and asked about what he took. He said that Tang Ming is out. While saying this, Gu Shaoyang was hiding behind his back, a hand filled with cursed energy. The girl thought that Nu Shaoyang had just pushed her away, but now he looked as usual. Sister Xia came up to the guy and said that he had won this stage, congratulating him on the first place. Shaoyang thanked Sister Xia. The girl said that she and the master would take care of Tang Ming, also mentioning that Mr. Lin is an experienced alchemist and healer. Gu Shaoyang bowed and asked Sister Mya to take care of Tang Ming. The girl noticed that the color of Gu's palms changed and the curse disappeared from his palms. Servants were carrying Tang Ming's motionless body on a stretcher from the scene of the duel. Watching this, Nu Shaoyang thought that he could not imagine that the exam for Tang Ming would end this way. And Hua Shiran is involved in all this, which is very mean of him. Apparently, Nu Shaoyang needed to worry about how to get rid of him. When Shaoyang absorbed Tang Ming's cursed energy, it left his body, but it also affected Gu's body. Fortunately, the guy was able to suppress her. Apparently, Shaoyang should have learned more about his ability to absorb attributes. Gu Shaoyang came to the elder's courtyard. He called him an interesting fellow, because Shaoyang managed to become the best disciple of the outer sect in just a month. The master gave Shaoyang the opportunity to choose any technique he liked in the Tibetan scriptures pavilion. Shaoyang thanked Elder Lin with all his heart and joy. Considering that Gu Shaoyang had already mastered the sword intent technique, the Lord decided to recommend Shaoyang as a disciple to Elder Lei. He is the most skilled swordsman in the sect, so the master recommended Gu to study with him. Gu said that he has always been interested in creating pills and elixirs and would like to study alchemy. Master Lin was surprised to ask Shaoyang if he really wanted to study alchemy. Shaoyang thought that at the moment he is able to learn by simply absorbing attributes, so it makes no sense for him to learn martial arts. However, studying alchemy can help him better understand the nature of attributes. Gu said out loud that he wanted to study with Elder Lin. Shaoyang thought that the higher the level of cultivation a person has, the fewer attributes with Kai energy he produces, which means pills and stones are the only source of attributes for new Shaoyang in the future. Sister Zia in a rage shouted that Gu did not pretend to be a fool, because he had already mastered the intention of the sword and was going to go into alchemy with such data. Shaoyang only calmly replied that he had always believed that he had the ability to alchemy. He had just come across bad teachers before. But this time the guy did not want to miss such an opportunity. Sister Zia again indignantly shouted that Shaoyang was talking nonsense, because the teachers of the outer sect had not even seen a single pill in their eyes, and Shaoyang says that he has talent. Gu replied that according to this logic, Sister Zia should tell him why she, who also mastered the sword technique, is listed as a student of Master Lin. Sister Zia began to talk about how alchemy is probably a cover for Shaoyang. But before the sister could finish, Gu said that Sister Zia was wrong and Shaoyang did not want to join the alchemists for her sake. The master laughed and told the girl to stop the altercation. Since Gu Shaoyang wants to study alchemy, Lin will agree to become his teacher. But the gentleman said that the fact that both geniuses of the King Yun sect are under the command of Master Ling, someone might not like it. The elder said that Shaoyang could learn from Sister Zia, and she would help him with cultivation. Shaoyang liked this news, unlike Kinku, who was put into a stupor by such a decision of the master. The master told Shaoyang to go to the inner office and check in. There are also people there who will give Gu a new home. When Shaoyang was settled, he had to come to Master Lin to start teaching him alchemy. Gu bowed and left to carry out the master's order. However, the girl stopped Gu, saying that she had a conversation with him. The girl asked Shaoyang if he was really going to study alchemy, to which Gu replied positively. He said that he feels that he has no problem breaking through to the next level, and it's just about cultivation. Shaoyang also mentioned that making pills and elixirs is more important for him now. Sister Zia reminded him that she and Gu had made a bet the last time they met, and now she must fulfill any of his wishes. The girl admitted that she had been waiting for his return all this time and even sent a person to an external sect to find Shaoyang. The girl also added that the choice of a teacher should be taken seriously, and if Gu wants to study alchemy because of what happened between them, then it's better not to. Shaoyang was a little embarrassed and told Sister Zia that he did not understand what she really wanted to study alchemy, because she thought he was not bad at it. Regarding the bet, the guy wanted to ask Sister Zia to recommend him a suitable sword technique, because at that time the guy didn't really understand what the intention of the sword was. The girl was surprised by such a request and remembered that the one who gets the first place also gets a high-level technique. The girl said that she was well acquainted with the Tibetan scriptures pavilion and would be happy to help Shaoyang choose a good technique. Gu said he was immensely grateful to Sister Zia. He said that he would go to the office first, and then they could go to the pavilion together. The girl agreed. In the office, a man looked curiously at the person who took first place in the exam. Shaoyang said that he had just become an inner disciple and wanted to undergo the necessary procedure. An employee of the office gave Gu Shaoyang a pass and ordered him not to lose it in any case. Shaoyang thanked the employee for taking such care of him. The man said that it was not difficult for him and asked Shaoyang to follow him to show him the place where he would now live. The worker led Shaoyang to some kind of rickety structure without walls. Hay was lying around and there was a well nearby. Shaoyang was surprised that the dwelling of an outer sect disciple is better than the dwelling of an inner sect disciple. To this, the clerk replied that since Shaoyang is new, he does not yet know that such housing is a way to encourage students to cultivate, because cultivators do not pursue human benefits. In response to this, Shaoyang said that the man was lying well, but the place he brought Gu to was more like a warehouse where livestock feed was stored, and not the dwelling of an inner sect disciple, for which the man was trying to pass this place off. In that case, who then lives in all the beautiful tall houses standing nearby? The clerk replied that in the inner sect there is a rule under which the strongest get the right to choose their own home. So the man recommended Shaoyang to be a good boy and stay where he brought him. hinting that such accommodation is a consequence of the fact that Shaoyang crossed the road to the wrong people. Gu asked the man if it was the work of Hua Shuron, to which the employee replied that since Shaoyang guessed without him, there was no point in explaining. The man also added that Brother Hua is the 28th strongest in the inner sect and Gu Shaoyang is not his equal. In response to this, Shaoyang replied that he still could not understand something. Shaoyang quieted down, and the clerk asked Gu what he meant. Suddenly, Shaoyang became enraged and numerous tentacles with black energy began to emanate from his body. Gu said that he did not understand how some 28th in strength dared to behave as if the entire sect belonged to him. The man was afraid of such a force from Shaoyang. Gu said that he had made the decision that he would live in Hua Shuron's chambers. At this time, Hua, who was in his chambers, was laughing at Gu Shaoyang, imagining his face when he found out which chambers he would live in. His servant stood by and said that her master was very smart and his methods were very resourceful. Hua said that Gu was just lucky last time, calling him a brat. But now that Shaoyang had entered the inner sect, Shuron was going to show the guy his real strength. Suddenly, someone shouted under the windows, calling Hua Shuron to the street. It was Gu Shaoyang. He said that Hua's chambers would become his and was not going to back down. The clerk began to persuade Shaoyang to stop and even promised to provide him with other housing. But he was adamant. It was obvious that the worker was scared and did not want a fight to start between the cultivators. Angry, Hua went outside to Shaoyang. Gu said he was challenging Shuron to a duel for his house. Hua only laughed, saying that Shaoyang values his strength too highly and he will not be able to defeat Shuron. Gu thinks in vain that if he was able to take first place in the exam, then now he is equal to all the inner sect disciples. Hua said that inner disciples have been training for years to perfect their cultivation. Shaoyang urged Hua to stop talking. Gu shared that he had heard that Hua Shuron's courtyard was filled with Kai energy and for this reason he wanted to take over his house. Hua was furious. He did not understand how Shaoyang decided to fight with him, because Gu was only at the stage of comprehending Kai, while Shuron was already at the level of condensed truth. In response to this, Shaoyang took out his sword and said that in a verbal altercation, Hua Shuron had not gone far from Gu and invited him to fight. In response, Hua agreed, took out his sword and said that he would show Gu Shaoyang how to spell the word die. Gu reminded Hua that last time it was enough for him to use just one move of the sword to defeat him and he hopes that this time everything will be different. The clerk heard these words and could not believe his ears. Was someone able to defeat Hua Shuron with a single movement of the sword? Hua was angered by the reminder of this aspect of their last fight and vowed to destroy Shaoyang. Hua also added that he had been training the intoxicating spring breeze technique for several years and he would show Shaoyang what a real sword technique is. After these words, Hua attacked Shaoyang with a blow of 10 Lai peach blossoms. Shaoyang was very surprised by what he saw. The guy called it a show-off and said he would show Hua his sword intent. The worker watching the fight noted that the intention of the sword of Gu corresponds to the level of the teacher. In the end, Hua lost to Shaoyang and now had to give him his house. Gu mentioned that in order to kill him, Hua even gave Tang Ming a cursed pill, and now he will no longer be able to cultivate. The employee called Shaoyang the new genius of the inner sect, because he was able to defeat Hua Shuron with one attack. Shuron said that no one would notice the death of an outer sect disciple like Gu if he finished him off. Shaoyang said that Hua underestimates Gu. Xia Qinkyu is the first beauty in the sect, but Shaoyang is not going to stay in it and in general on the Tianyuan continent. Shaoyang told Hua to get out of his house because Gu was not going to kill him in the sect. But if Shuron catches the eye of Shaoyang outside the sect, he is finished. The employee thanked Shaoyang and called him a real hero. Shaoyang said he could forget about what happened earlier. He asked the clerk to help him re-equip the house and take out all the things of Hua Shuron, and he agreed. After that, Gu left, saying that he still had things to do, and the sect worker thought that the rating of the inner sect would change soon.